Okay, joining me now is my longtime friend from my extension days, Dr. Justin Scheiner. Justin, how's it going? And thanks for taking the time to hang out with me on this podcast.
It's going great, Fritz. This is the pinnacle of my career. I've been wanting to be on your podcast for a long time. So thank you very much for finally answering my request and having me on.
Yeah, you didn't ask me anything. I asked you, Justin. So I appreciate all of that. We'll get through the BS now and get right to the good stuff. You and I go back a long time, actually. When I also worked for Texas A&M in the extension department, I did viticulture for the Gulf Coast region, and then I did statewide viticulture. And what's interesting is when I transitioned and moved to California and left that position to get some experience on the West Coast, you actually came into that position and they morphed it into a professor position. So you're on campus there. And so I'm going to ask you to just tell the listener a little bit about what you do at Texas A&M and, how you got interested in plant science, horticulture, viticulture, just a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are.
Sure. Yeah, my official title is Associate Professor and Viticulture Specialist, which means I've got this, academic rank title, and I have a teaching appointment in addition to the extension side. So I teach one class a semester with 600 students. It's called Understanding Wine. It's fun. And then the other aspect of my job is the extension part, which is all sorts of things, which I think we'll probably talk about. But you asked me how I got into this, and I'll give you the briefest version that I can give you. I've been crafting my story about how I found wine, and I don't have one yet. I was going to say that, my first wine, as I was having it, I was appreciating the nuances. I was going to say, how did they make this Boone's Farm so good? Probably was my first wine, probably was, but I really didn't know anything about wine. And I was in high school. Again, it's going to be fast, I think. I was I was a lousy student, small town, dry county, but we found a way to have a lot of fun. And I had two older brothers. They went off to Sam Houston State and they would sneak me up there into the clubs occasionally. And I realized that's where I wanted to be. Get out of the small town, go to college. And I didn't know what I want to do. And this is the interesting thing I talk to the students about in classes. How do you know what you want to be if you never worked anywhere or had any experience? And so instead of going after the money, I went after the thing that interested me, which was plants. And so I majored in horticulture. And what do you do in Huntsville for a job? At least at that time, it was work at the prison. So I was a prison guard.
What angle cut will best prevent pruning wound diseases? Or in general, is it better to have an angled cut when you're pruning dormant grapevines, or can you use a perpendicular square cut? So here's what AI says. Let me just bear with me while I read through it. AI says a 45-degree angled cut is best for preventing pruning wound diseases in grapevines. This angle helps water run off the wound surface, reducing moisture retention and the risk of fungal infections like U-type dieback and Botryopspheriae canker. Why a 45-degree angle cut is effective? So number one, water shedding. The angle cut prevents water from pulling on the wound, which is critical because standing moisture encourages fungal spore germination and infection. Okay, next point, faster healing. A clean sloped cut expresses less cambial tissue and promotes quicker callus formation, sealing the wound more efficiently. I don't know. I'm gonna really go back to that one later. Disease defense. Cuts made at improper angles or flat square cuts can leave larger, slower healing wounds that are more vulnerable to trunk disease pathogens. Again, we'll have to revisit that one. That sounds incorrect. I'm sorry. Am I wearing my opinion on my sleeve right now as I go through? Sorry about that. And then a cut just above a bud, angling the cut away from it to protect the emerging shoot. Okay, so they're suggesting cut just above the bud, angling the cut away from it to protect the emerging shoot. Okay, Justin, what do you think about this answer? I already pointed out two things that kind of set a red flag for me, but what do you think?
Well, in general, just to generalize, I'm not a fan. So the AI, the models that we're talking about here, ChatGPT, they more or less are grabbing what's on the internet. They don't think for themselves or generate improved responses. They just grab what's out there, condense it, which you could lose nuance in that case for sure, and then spit out an answer. Doesn't mean it's a correct answer, it's an answer. And so somewhere on the internet, someone wrote that 45-degree angle is best. And so that's what it is, grab that information. Like 45-degree angle, what if which we would probably not retain this if we didn't need to, but what if the cane was pointed down? That's not going to have any impact. It's already going to be dripping if we're talking about sap or water or.
Correct. Yeah.
Furthermore, so a pathologist would say, cut is the infection court is what they would call it. The area where the spore lands, germinates, that's where that infection begins. If you cut it flat and the canes are somewhat circular, it's a smaller surface area than if you start cutting at an angle. So I would argue with that answer just from that, because 45-degree angle, you're gonna have more surface area now exposed than if you cut flat. And
Amen.
We're talking about reducing the time or the potential for infection. Timing of when you prune, of course, matters. It didn't say anything about the climate or weather conditions at that time or time of the season phenologically. Also, furthermore, did not talk about wound protectants or anything like that. So you get this super simplified response.
So the next question is, cane or spur pruning better? Right? This is a really big umbrella question. So maybe it's not fair to use a big one like this, but I just couldn't help myself. We need to know what AI says about this. So this is what we got back. Okay, cane versus spur pruning. Neither cane nor spur pruning is universally better. The best method depends on your grape variety, climate, and vineyard goals. Cane pruning suits varieties with fruitful buds farther from the base, while spur pruning works well for varieties with basal bud fertility and is easier to mechanize. Okay, so we'll start with just what they say about cane pruning. I don't strongly disagree with those broad generalizations there so far. Cane pruning, or like a guyot system, is best for varieties like Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and other European wine grapes with low basal bud fertility. How it works: you select one or two healthy canes from last year's growth and train them along the trellis, and you remove the others. Okay, sure, that's a broad statement. Now, how do you do that? It doesn't teach you, but that's for sure. And then they have some pros and cons. So the pros are, cane pruning promotes better fruit quality when renewing fruiting wood annually, or by renewing fruiting wood annually. It improves airflow and sunlight penetration, reducing disease risk. Okay. And it's ideal for cooler climates where winter damage is a concern. Okay, those all sound very good. The cons, okay, AI says more labor intensive and requires skill in cane selection, and needs strong trellis support. Okay, that's interesting. So Justin, before we go to spur pruning, let's take a break and just talk about what AI told us about cane pruning, and is this helpful for a grower in answering that question?
Yeah, again, this is the fine details. Part of it might be, this AI tool is the questions you pose, you're going to get an equal response. And a vague question is going to probably get you a vague response. I'm not saying anything about the accuracy, but yeah, it's a very general question. So it takes more time to cane prune. We would probably agree with that, but it takes a lot more than that's a simplification of it. So New York, growing up there, so to speak, with the grapes and learning how to prune, it was almost all cane pruning. And the idea, the concept there primarily was that we do have quite a bit of winter injury. There's these multiple trunk system, the spare parts of viticulture. If you have these cordons and you have injury and you have to constantly cut them out, it's extra work, but it takes a lot more time to cane prune, more skill. The other challenge is getting enough buds. So what a lot of people there would do was 2-tier flat cane to try to double it up. Anyway.
Yeah.
Long story short, again, we're simplifying something that's got a lot of parts, which is why there are consultants, which is why there are trained viticulturists to help with those complicated decisions.